All right, look at that. Incredibly kind and quiet and subdued crowd for an afternoon on a Thursday here in beautiful downtown Portland. We're going to bring it back a little bit to an uplifting note today. I'm actually very excited about this conversation that we're having. My name is Andrew Hone, President and CEO of the Portland Business Alliance. Really thrilled to be with you. And today is our story of celebrating downtown Portland's comeback, because it is coming back. And more specifically, we are also celebrating something that has been a goal of mine for nearly 4 years. I've been on this job for almost precisely 4 years. And this event has traditionally been in the morning. In fact, before COVID, it started at 7:30 in the morning, which was rough for those of us, especially those with young children. So today, I'm going to do something. This has been a goal of mine for so long, to move it to the afternoon so that we could have a refreshing locally crafted beverage. And just to all of you, I wanted to salute you, raise your glass, and cheers to togetherness and coming back to in-person. Thank you. Cheers. So with that, I want to give a lot of gratitude to the people that make this event possible, and they are our sponsors who step up each and every single event. And I'm so grateful to have both KeyBank and the Portland Tribune. So please first give our two corporate sponsors a big round of applause for what they do for us. And joining us today from KeyBank is Barb Cardinlee. And I think I got that right. Barb, did I say that correctly? Almost? Just about. You'll correct me, however. So please give Barb a big round of applause. I'm going to take my drink with me too. So.
Well, thank you. Well, good afternoon. I'm Barb Cardinelli. I'm the business banking sales leader at KeyBank here in Oregon and Southwest Washington, and a longtime resident. I love the wonderful vibe that is here in downtown Portland. My family and I, we've made it a tradition year after year to attend the Portland Rose Festival and all the various events that we have here and the Courthouse Square. They're some of the most cherished memories that I have with my family, and I'm sure as many of you have as well. I'm also certain that you are just thrilled as we are that Portland is back with a full slate of exciting events coming up this summer. As members of downtown business community, it is important that we all do our best and express interest that Portland remain the thriving, energetic city we all know and love. Together, we can be ambassadors to promote all that's happening downtown, the great experiences with visitors have venturing out. So next time you're considering bringing your family out for dinner or dinner with a colleague or a client, think about downtown. The more we invite our neighbors and friends downtown, the faster it will regain its vibrancy and vitality. More our businesses will collectively flourish in a city that we call Portland. On that note, I'm excited to hear what our community leaders have to share about what's in store for a fantastic summer in downtown Portland as we reimagine the beloved events and traditions that make Portland, Portland. So I'll turn it back to Andrew.
Thank you so much to KeyBank. We appreciate your support. And now please join me in welcoming Jules Rogers from the Tribune. Everybody, please give Jules a big round of applause.
Thank you, Andrew. We didn't used to cover every new business opening in downtown Portland in the Tribune, but these days the return to downtown is newsworthy. After 2 years without many new openings at all, and many of our favorite places boarded up, the number of businesses returning to downtown is noteworthy. There's been more than a few examples of new openings coming to downtown in the last month or so, including Gloriana, Cotopaxi, Next Level Burger, and of course, the Portland Business Alliance's return to the downtown office and reopening of its community room is a big one for everyone in this room. But it's not just about one brick and mortar location opening here or there in the city. We take a look at the larger picture of what's going on with real estate downtown. Quarterly, we cover the industrial real estate market. Most recently, the exponential rise of e-commerce during the pandemic is among the factors driving the growth in Portland's industrial real estate market into 2022. With steadily shrinking vacancies and availability rates driving rental rates up, our writer Melody Finnemore reports according to Kidder Matthews and market analysts. On the other hand, low inventory and high demand are creating multifamily housing investor hesitancy in the downtown core, according to a recent study from Multifamily Northwest. Some data suggests that suburban homes are in higher demand as more people work from home and value square footage. Experts are saying that changes to inclusionary housing policy and rent caps could create more incentive for more developers and investors to build more downtown, relieving the tight vacancy rates. We follow what all this means for commercial real estate developers, builders, and investors at the Business Tribune, as well as industrial real estate trends. A regional source of news, readers will find a balance of trends from downtown Portland and from the suburbs, from Uptown to the Jade District, from Forest Grove to Prineville. Pamplin Media Group is the only locally owned media outlet in the state that covers hyperlocal communities and offers readers coverage for their local community and regionally across the state. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you for being here, Jules, and appreciate the coverage. Local media has never been more important, and appreciate all that you do. And thank you for supporting this event. And we want to pivot now just into something that I want to level set with everybody. A lot of you participate in our State of the Economy report, where we provide an annual assessment of the trends that impact the economy of our region, and also take particular focuses into things that are salient for whatever it is the business community is thinking about. This year, the State of the Economy report, which we released in January and held the event here in February, was just incredibly insightful, because obviously the changes in the fundamentals of the economy are just drastic these days. And if you're tracking things that have been at historic highs, including inflation and pressures on the labor market, there are no ways to equate what is happening now to any point in history. And I always think back to some of the initial days of the pandemic, where over the second quarter of 2020, we saw the largest job loss in American history. I mean, it is just astounding the things that have happened to the market and to our economy over the past several years. And now we're going to give all of you a little bit of a just reality check where we have come from since December. And we're going to look into some key indicators that I think are highly of interest to this community, right? How are people returning to the office? If you look at where we were in December, it was at the peak of Omicron heading into January. There was an ongoing sense of concern around the pandemic. We still had high rates of political violence occurring, as also as crime. So deterrence towards returning to an active lifestyle. Plus also, we were in the middle of the winter. It's not exactly the best time to be walking around downtown Portland, although we are a hardy bunch here. So where have we come from since then? And we're really lucky to get some updates and insights from our colleagues at Echo Northwest. And today we're joined by Mike Wilkerson, and just is going to provide us the insights about where we have come from and where we are going. So with that, please join me in welcoming Mike Wilkerson from Echo Northwest. There's a clicker coming this way.
Thank you for the intro. No pressure, right, Andrew? I think if the thought of hearing from an economist and equating that with good news over the last 2 years probably hasn't been a thing that regularly occurs. I think I was having some conversations earlier, questions where, what's the outlook looking like? Is it good? And I would say, it's improving, right? I mean, I think we have to contextualize everything we're talking about. And so as Andrew said, I think we're seeing some changes certainly over the last several months, and we wanted to do kind of a mid-year update versus where we were in December and January when we did this last. So, I think the first measure that everyone's going to look at is jobs. I'm going to argue that this is probably less relevant now than it ever has been, but certainly it is a good place to start. And you can kind of see this, what many are calling the square root recovery, right? As Andrew mentioned, we had the biggest job loss in 1 month and then a recovery. The recession lasted a whopping 2 months and we started recovering jobs again. And it's been pretty steady, recovery. And now we're looking like early 2023, all of the jobs that were lost will be regained. When we did this earlier in the year, it was 3.3%. We're now at 2.4%. Is all of that interesting? I'd say generally not that interesting. Why is that not that interesting? Well, because this pandemic and the recession and then the recovery has been very unequal, right? Some people have been largely unimpacted. Some people have actually benefited in terms of their sectors they're in, and others have been really hit hard. And so we still see that today. When you look at the overall economy, some sectors are actually up. They have more jobs today than they had pre-pandemic, kind of continuing the steady growth trend. Others are flat. And then really you look at leisure and hospitality, as no surprise, as being the hardest hit sector. At the peak of the recession, that's the light blue bar, almost half of the jobs were lost. Today we're tracking 10 or 11% job losses in the metro region. Well, why does that matter? I think the answer is, it matters based on location more than ever. And so when you look at the region, in previous recessions, Multnomah County actually has done better than, say, Clackamas and Washington County. And now we see the exact opposite. Clackamas and Washington County have fewer job losses than the rest of the region. It's really Multnomah County, and certainly the city of Portland is the major contributor within Multnomah County, being down effectively 3 times the job loss rate. And the question is why? And is that a downtown impact? I would say the answer is partially because it depends on the sectors. The top chart, it's a little bit small, is kind of unpacking the manufacturing sector. So in aggregate, manufacturing sector is down 1% of jobs. So basically break even. What you'll see is things like wood products, computer and semiconductors are actually up. It's really your transportation and your primary metals that are really down. And some of the largest employers in the region in those things are in the city of Portland, and they've experienced the largest job losses. And so again, I would say that's the not downtown effect. That's the happenstance of supply chain and other pandemic related issues really hitting hard in a couple of industries. The downtown specific effect is much more the leisure and hospitality sector. And that's the bottom chart. And you can look at, Clackamas County and Washington County. Yes, they're down, about 10%, but Multnomah County leisure and hospitality jobs are down 20%. So that's really that impact of the core of where most of those leisure and hospitality jobs are located in and around the downtown core. Restaurants, you can kind of look at, is this typical in Portland, what you're seeing in other places? The answer is, not really. We have these peer markets we've established over the number of years with the Portland Business Alliance that we continuously track against. So we have Nashville, Austin, Denver, Indianapolis, and Seattle. And during the pandemic, Portland and Seattle have behaved almost the same, which is to say, over the last year, really, there's been no return to restaurants through this one data lens, which is open table reservations. And so, a question I think we're asking ourselves is something different in Portland and Seattle, where businesses are, people who are using open table reservations went out of business and other businesses came back? We don't know, but there's definitely something different versus our other 4 peer regions are, either above or very close to where they were pre-pandemic. So this is one of those indicators, again, that's leading us to believe that, yes, this leisure and hospitality industry is kind of, approaching its kind of near-term recovery potential. What does that mean for downtown? I think the answer is it depends. And I think the measures that we use previously aren't that relevant today. So jobs, I think, is not that relevant, and I'll talk to you about that in a moment. Similarly, vacancy rates. Typically you'd look at the health of a let's say, of a downtown economy that's largely office centric, and you look at the vacancy rates. And so our vacancy rates in Portland have always been higher than our peers. They still are. They're the highest amongst all of them. And so, why does that matter? I think today it matters less because what really matters is bodies. If we're talking about the vibrancy of downtown and the connectedness and the amenity factor, that's really driven by people. And people in downtown Portland, different than other places, is really a mix of tourists, a mix of residents, more so than in some of these places, and then certainly that key office component. And so even if you had lower vacancy rates, the question is how many people are actually downtown? And so what the pandemic has done is mostly bad things, but some things have been good. We now have new and better data sets that allow us to track things much more real time and much more place-based data than we ever had before. One of those data sets is placer. It's taking cell phone data. So when you turn on your apps and it's like, would you like to disable location tracking? If you don't say no, it's tracking you and it's aggregating 700 apps and it's following you in places that you sit for 7 minutes or longer. And so they have pretty good idea of what's going on down to an individual business, an individual day, an individual time of day. We're not getting that specific here, but you can. But what you can do is draw a big fence around the city of downtown Portland. And here we've drawn a big fence around downtown Seattle. And we said, how many people are actually there? And it's, by their estimates, over 95% accurate. So, better than anything else we would get that's real time. And what we've seen is, throughout the pandemic, visitors, so these aren't employees, these aren't necessarily tourists, it's tourists plus people who don't live or work in a place, all of them, have returned less slowly in downtown Portland than in downtown Seattle. The trends have been similar, but you can see Portland has been hit harder. And so, as Andrew mentioned, when we looked at this in January, that was like right when Omicron came. You can see that dip. We were at, about down 40%. Right before then, it dipped a couple of percentage points and has now come back. And so this is the kind of, improving story I was talking about. Yes, it's improving. We're now at, down 32%, certainly not the same as Seattle, but much better than we were a year ago, which was down 60% in terms of foot traffic. So I think that's the visitor side of the equation. What's a little bit different is the employee side of the equation. So here we're looking at the same thing, downtown Portland versus downtown Seattle. And what you see is, what you don't see in the employment data is return to work has been very limited, right? If employment is down in aggregate, 3% or 2.5%, even in some sectors, if it's down 10%, you look here and you say, oh, foot traffic is down 60 to 70% in Portland. And that's what you're really going to experience when you walk around downtown. Our office is downtown. We've been coming in pretty consistently throughout the pandemic. Depending on where you're at, you see, far, far fewer people. And that's a combination of employees plus tourists plus people who are down visiting. I lost the slide, but that's okay. They shut me down. They said, you're not supposed to have access to that data. The next couple slides I could talk to you even if we can't fix it. But I think the story here is, as economists, we typically use really lagged indicators and try to guess what's going on, whether that's population and migration, whether that's jobs looking 2 months back, et cetera. I think what we're learning now in the new normal is, those indicators don't track the things we actually are interested in, which is what are we experiencing in terms of real time things that matter, like bodies and foot traffic, not necessarily are you employed, are you not employed? Are you leasing space, but only there 2 days a week or 3 days a week, not 5 days a week? So that's the bulk of the downtown story. I had a couple other slides which I can talk to, which are largely around what's happening in the real estate markets. That's something we've been tracking consistently with the Alliance in terms of what's happening under construction. And what's been happening is the city of Portland has been declining in terms of units under construction for apartments since 2019. So the trend has been well known, exacerbated by the pandemic and many other factors, but well known that the rate of units under construction has been dropping. At the metro level, we've seen the same thing. What we have seen and what we've looked at the data pretty extensively is that trend is seemingly hitting the bottom. In the metro, in this quarter, there are more units of apartments under construction than there were last quarter. That's the first time that's happened in 2.5 years. The city of Portland seems to be right at the bottom. So the city of Portland is still struggling. When we look at the permit data though, permit is a leading indicator. We see that permits are back almost to where they were pre-pandemic levels. So at a certain point, all those permits are going to lead to units under construction. There are very few units under construction, so that'll kind of level this out and take us back into the next cycle of kind of building in the region. I think the question that's related to today is, what does that mean for downtown? I think it's a surprise to no one. There are fewer units happening in downtown relative to the overall permits than we saw previously. There's some activity in the Pearl. There's a little bit in the Central East Side, some in South Waterfront, but in the core of the downtown, there's effectively no new permits happening for apartments. And for the better part of a decade, that wasn't the case. You saw lots of activity here. So I think that's one of those other indicators that we can look at. And the last thing is rent. Early on in the pandemic, rent dropped by, depending on how you measure it, 7 to 10%. in the central of the city of Portland. This was typical in many places. A lot of, people talking about exodus, remote work, et cetera. The region as a whole, though, never saw any rent decrease. And so what we've seen is in the data, rents increasing at about a 10% year over year rate for the entirety of the region. That's about as high as it's ever been. So we're, on some indicators you look at and you say, okay, we see some kind of vestiges of the pandemic, and other indicators like rent, we see the market performing as high as it ever did. The city of Portland is growing at about 6% for rent for apartments. Central City is about 5%. So we don't really see the rent impacts downtown as much. It's really more investor sentiment and kind of the idea of, what do we want to be, where do we want to be investing in the city? And what we're seeing in the data is, not as much interest in the downtown as we once did. There's a slide I was talking about. From memory, I will say, it's happy hour. I didn't have too many drinks, so I was able to remember most of the specifics. But for those of you watching on time, online or later, here's the chart on the permits, which I was describing as falling. You can see it in fact fell. Here's the data on rent, which I described as falling in the central city, which you can see, and then recovering. Now you can see it, and the rent for the region also, has steadily increased along the way. So that is a quick tour of the data as an update from where we were in May. And again, I think the takeaway is improving. Thank you.
Talk about recovery. We certainly recovered those slides in perfect timing. So let's give it up to Mike one more time for walking us through that. And a perfect setup. And before we get right into our panel today, I am really pleased that we have with us our board chair from the Oregonian Media Group. It's John Maher. Everyone, please give John a really warm welcome.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks to everybody for being here today. This is one of my last official acts as board chair, and then I'm 40 days out from the end, which will transition over on July 1. And I can't make, I could probably pretty easily on a day like today promise 40 days of rain. I'm going to push for 40 days of sun to finish off. I mean, I think that would be a good way to end it. So good afternoon, everyone. Super excited about this discussion right here. We heard Mike talking about so many systemic and functional level issues that are holding us back in some ways propelling us forward. And rather than be subject to sort of the winds of change, it's about what can we do to sort of grab onto that oar and pull and drive our way forward as a community. Portland has always been just historically a crown jewel in the region. It's been a city of makers, a city of beauty, an accessible city, a safe city, all those kinds of things. And over the past couple of years, we've certainly seen our challenges across that wide variety, that wide spectrum for our city. We all want it to improve. That's why we're here. That's why we do the things that we do. So I'd like to say thank you to everybody that took the time to be here today for our panel discussion, to learn more about where we're heading and how we're planning to get there. I deeply appreciate that, because the things that we do, when you think about the Rose Festival, Blues Fest, the events that are coming up at Pioneer Courthouse Square, which are things that we've done in the past, but certainly with a particular focus this year, certainly with a lot of energy around it on behalf of everybody in our community. So I want to say thank you to everybody who's been involved in bringing that together, making it happen. Thanks to you for being here today. And I'd love to introduce Katie Meyer. Katie is the Chief of Staff to Commissioner Mingus Mapps and co-chair for the Mayor's Events Action Table, which has been ongoing for quite some time now, and is really sort of a group effort to rally around this in support of our community for all of us. So Katie, take us away. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Happy to be here. We're going to jump right in, and I'm going to introduce our panel for today. First is Jeff Curtis, the CEO of the Rose Festival.
Thanks.
Great to be here. I thank the Business Alliance. I'm Jeff Curtis, again, CEO of Rose Festival. Been its CEO for 18 years and 25 years in the events industry with the Rose Festival.
Great. And next is Christina Fuller, Festival Director for the Waterfront Blues Festival.
Thank you, Katie. I'm thrilled to be here again, Festival Director of the Waterfront Blues Festival and co-owner of Fuller Events, an event production and strategic planning organization primarily supporting community events.
Great. And then last but not least, Jennifer Polver, Executive Director for the Pioneer Courthouse Square.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you for having me here today. I have been in Portland for 33 years and have made it my home, and I love it here. And I have actually been with the Square for 2 decades, which is crazy to say out loud, but it's great to be here and look forward to chatting with you.
Great. So we'll start with you, Christina. The Blues Fest had alternative programming in 2020 and then held the event on the South Waterfront last year. Why was it important to return the event to Tom McCall Waterfront Park? And how is your organization working to attract people to attend?
Blues Festival, where it seems that we should be at the waterfront. Something about a 35-year event being at home right there in downtown Portland. The place and the space is really a key part of the event's success for many years. When you picture a summer day in Portland and you're at the Blues Festival and you've had a cold beer and you're a little bit sunburned and the music's playing on the stage and there's the river and the bridge in the background, it feels like everything is right. And that place is really important for the event and for the success of the event, the way that it's been built over 3 decades. And so it really is the right home for the event. So we're thrilled to bring it back there for that reason. But also the opportunity to be strategic in bringing 80,000 people back to downtown Portland, which is why we're all here having these conversations of how do we get people back downtown. We've got sort of an ace up our sleeve, a trick shot of 80,000 people that want to go somewhere and they'll follow the event. So we should bring it back to downtown Portland and take the risk and be intentional about where we do it. And there's no better time than right now to add the energy and life and music back to downtown.
Great, thank you. Jeff, I'm looking forward to the return of the Rose Festival. Can you tell us what all will be happening downtown and a little bit more about the parades, including the Grand Floral Parade that will not be happening in downtown? Do you see a future where the Grand Floral Parade will be returning downtown?
Great question. And there was some hype about that, about Rose Festival avoids downtown related to Grand Floral Parade, a decision that we made in partnership with the city. So a couple things. First, Rose Festival is big in downtown. It's all our headquarters is in down at Waterfront Park, year-round headquarters. Starlight Parade is in our core downtown. City Fair, our 10-day fair, 3 full weekends is in Waterfront Park. Dragon Boats on the river, Fleet Week on the river. So we are absolutely downtown for 3.5 full weeks. Grand Floral is an exception. I just want to talk about that briefly because I think it's related to the challenge of producing special events. Things are different in all your jobs and our jobs just after the pandemic, and resources are a real challenge. And what's most important for Rose Festival is to come back, be able to come back, but also make it a safe and welcoming experience. And safety is a big part of our planning. And for Grand Floral Parade, if you've not known this, it's was a 4.2 mile route. Think about 4 miles of all the cross streets that have to be protected and all the efforts and the resources, volunteers, police resources, barricades, all that. So they're in partnership with the city. That just isn't quite enough resources right now to support safely 4 miles of route. So we decided to make it a shorter route and then to concentrate those resources, still have a world-class parade. But so then we had a choice to make, east or west of the river. And we consciously chose for Grand Floral Parade on the east side of the river. We like the idea of Rose Festival in different parts of the city. We like the part of revitalizing the Lloyd District. And we like the Rose Quarter as a headquarter for the infrastructure required for that parade. And our research shows us a lot of parade goers are on MLK, and we didn't want to displace them. So we have parades on both sides of the river, and we're excited about that. And the long-term decision, as event planners, no decision is long-term. An event, we call ourselves adjustment artists. So we'll figure out if it's the right move long-term for us. One advantage for an east side route is the Earl Blumenauer Bridge crossing the Banfield Freeway and the access for bicycles and pedestrians to that part from the Central East Side, which I think could benefit events in that part of the city.
Great. Well, thank you for your flexibility and for keeping the parades. We're going to move on to Jennifer. Jennifer, Pioneer Courthouse Square has so many fun things to offer this summer. Can you tell us a bit more about what will be happening there throughout the summer and what you are most looking forward to?
Yes, I will say Pioneer Courthouse Square's mission is to provide programming year round. So we do about 350 events that we program each and every year through a management agreement that we have with the city of Portland. And so summer is the time when we have the lion's share of all the programming that we do produce. And I'm excited, I would say most for the fact that we have a lot of cultural events that are coming back. There's a lot of annual cultural celebrations that happen each and every year. That's really kind of the fabric of who we are. I think the last couple of years have been really challenging for a lot of groups to want to feel comfortable and be welcoming to coming back downtown. We've really worked hard and exerted a lot of effort to reach out to different cultural communities to bring them into downtown. So I'm really excited that the India Cultural Fest is coming back, the Chinese Festival is coming back, and we're also working on a Latin Brew Fest that will happen towards the end of summer. We will continue Noon Tunes, and we're going to reformat Flicks on the Bricks a little bit. So the stuff that's really been annualized that we produce will keep coming back. And then I think the newest thing that has everyone very excited because it has potential for a very large impact is we've partnered with True West, which is a concert promoter that you know very well. And together we have partnered and pulled together a new concert series that will be anchored at the square in the center of downtown. It's called PDX Live. It's going to be 16 ticketed concerts that are going to occur June through September. It is a very large undertaking. They are very great, fantastic bands, Tenacious D, The Roots. We just announced the Shins that are coming up. And so we're very excited. We're also very excited about the reception from our neighbors in the immediate surroundings and how excited they are, and just also other partners and stakeholders who have really gone to bat to market it throughout the region. So people from Idaho, Washington, Northern California will come to these destination shows. So we're really excited.
Great. I feel like we should also give a plug for the Dome, which is at Pioneer Courthouse Square right now. It was a collaboration between the Events Action Table and Pioneer Courthouse Square to give programming to downtown in the spring when there's not as much stuff going on. So it's a really cool dome structure that has programming right now.
It has vastly succeeded our expectations. And I think we've had like 85 groups come in, and we've been in the business now of having to turn people away because we just don't have the time or capacity. So it's been a fun project.
Wow. Okay, so this question is for each of you, and we'll start with Jeff. What role do you think events play in the revitalization of downtown Portland?
It's really easy. It's critical to the revitalization of downtown Portland. As the pandemic hit, and Rose Festival's been around 115 years, and it just comes and goes. But the pandemic hit, and we realized that our role matters more than ever. People need a place and a common festival. In our case, they need events to congregate to. It brings people together. So, specifically for us, we looked at the return of Rose Festival, and our decision to come back and timing of it was about really during the pandemic. It was about just getting by and about the changes in life and all the things challenges that we had, and healthcare workers, and the priorities of people that was their job to get us through the pandemic. And Rose Festival and the events industry largely were on the sidelines, adversely affected for sure. How are we going to survive? But for us, it was about, this is our greatest responsibility. It's now our turn to take center stage in Portland. It's the Rose Festival's turn to emerge and recreate the absolute atmosphere that the city needs, which is people downtown attending events, pre and post, going to restaurants, engaging in our city, walking our streets. So that's the responsibility that we take on now. It's our role to take that leadership role, and I'm proud of our organization for what we're about to do. We're going to be 3 full weeks of activity. Pre-pandemic is a $50 million economic impact. If we just get half of that this year, I think that's $25 million back into the community as a result of Rose Festival this year alone. So huge part of the comeback of Portland is events, all events.
Great. Jennifer, same question.
I think the economics that the events bring is really a very real thing that is at times undervalued, because there's tens of millions of dollars that come from all the work that is done collaboratively by everybody that's up here. And I think for me, the square at least represents a place where people can come together in these annual traditions and really have and build a history there and keep returning there. And so I think for us, our priority is reconnecting with an existing community that we had, but I think we also fully acknowledge there's a lot of new people that are living here. And so I think we also are really charged up to try and tell our story and make people care about downtown for the reasons we all have for decades, to really sort of reconnect them to what's happening. And so we spend a lot of time doing a lot of promotion to really kind of cross barriers of perception. And so I feel we're very fortunate. Oregonian is one of them. KGW and Alpha Broadcasting is also a really helpful beacon to sort of share that there's life downtown, things are safe downtown, and really kind of herald a welcome to new visitors, because we need them back.
Great, thank you.
I agree with Jeff. Our job feels more important than ever, in a way that we have a very big job to do this year. And events are critical. On the first day of ticket sales for the Blues Festival this year, within the first 8 hours, we had ticket buyers from 30 states and 3 countries. So that means people are showing up and people are ready, and they haven't counted Portland out, and they need something to come. And thankfully, music is a real easy sell. I'm not talking politics. I'm not campaigning. Music is for everybody. And so that alone, let's take the easy things and celebrate them. And that's music and festivals and events. Another moment I had probably 3 months ago, my husband and I were walking into Patty's, Southwest First and Yamhill. We spend a fair amount of time there pre-pandemic. We're getting back into it. And we walked in the door, we still had our masks on, and we hadn't been in there for a while, and the bartenders know us, but they looked at us. And what Patty's is to us oftentimes is a cafeteria. It's the closest to Waterfront Park for us, for a snack, for meeting, for Wi-Fi. If we're doing production, during setup for an event, we'll go over to Patty's. We've been there. So we walk in, the bartender looked at us, like my husband and I, in the eye, and said, without saying our names, without anything, said, "Does this mean events are back?" Because they saw us walk in the door and us showing up, and we brought people with us to meet there. They looked at us, "Does this mean events are coming back?" And that was meaningful. I think people would be surprised to know that Patty's, usually their biggest weekend of the year, is not St. Patrick's Day. It's July 4th weekend during the Blues Festival. So events are really important.
Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. A follow-up to that question, and we'll start with you, Christina, and go back the other way. How is your event navigating some of the known downtown challenges and continued spikes in COVID cases?
Good question. I think we're navigating a lot of the obvious things as well as we can, but I think what is uplifting and what is necessary moving forward is the collaboration and camaraderie we've seen across festivals, events, industries, with the city, with partner organizations. Just from the Blues Festival side, last weekend, we were down at Pioneer Courthouse Square, the Welcome Dome, with 3 hours of free live music for our community. It was amazing. We've worked with Hollywood Theater to do movie and music over in the East Side. We're working with Jack London to bring after-hour shows during the festival. And so partnerships and a true "we're in it together" still exist. As much as we said at the beginning of the pandemic, I think that's what is getting us through this, and is kind of moving us forward. And in terms of COVID, I'm just really thankful we're an outdoor event.
Jeff, same question.
You know, for us, it's about leading by example. Down right there at Waterfront Park, prime spot in our downtown core. And our windows were boarded up for almost 2 years, like a lot of businesses. And we're in a risk spot right there. And we made a decision in February, those boards have to come down. If we're going to produce the festival and have the public welcome downtown, we have to lead by example, and those boards need to come down immediately. And so that was piece of the puzzle. The second piece of the puzzle is basically really trying to reinvigorate our activities as we go through the months of May and June. You're going to see marching bands randomly performing at the noon hour, called noontime concerts. You're going to be, but what's that noise? And it's about creating a festive atmosphere. You're going to see bands on the sidewalks. In addition to the parades and all that, your Readers Festival is going to create a place to play in Portland, in downtown Portland, in our core. And that's what we're going to be doing. And again, lead by example. really just welcome the public back for sure. And no question about it. From a COVID standpoint, it's actually a practical question, is trying to keep our core team safe going into the festival, right? And especially right now, and in terms of just making sure our volunteers and all that are ready to go. We need them more than ever to produce the festival, and being mindful. We have a health advisory task force that works with Multnomah County Health and getting the latest updates, and just again, just being ready. But it does help that most of our events are outdoors, which are great for obviously in relation to COVID, because it's still low risk.
Thank you. Jennifer, Heart of Downtown, how are you all navigating the challenges? Plus,
COVID outdoors is great. We're an outdoor venue, 40,000 square feet, works out perfect. We are navigating through partnerships and relying and reshuffling the deck on how we work and sharing resources that are very limited with a lot of new partners. I think for us, also a big part of it is cleanliness and safety. We want to create an environment where people are welcome and feel safe. And so even just promoting and heralding the fact that we have full-time janitorial staff that are on that site 7 days a week. We have 24-hour security in place for people that want to come downtown or people that want to host events there, is been integral in conversations we've been having with luring clients back to be in the space, and it's been helpful.
great. So we're going to stick with you for the next question, Jennifer. What can the business community do to help make these events successful?
Spread the word, tell your employees, tell your neighbors, and opening up, be ambassadors for things that are happening in downtown. Buy tickets to events and activities that are happening. And if you have the capacity, give money and donate and sponsor, because I think the amount of work and expense that goes into all of these events is extraordinary. And I think as inflation rises and there are really severe staffing struggles, it is all the more important that we all collectively have the resources to be able to deliver what everyone is expecting without cutting too many corners. So that would be my hope and dream. So thank you.
Christina, same question. What can the business community do to help?
Show up to events, show up in person, like Jennifer said, put your money where your mouth is. That's what we do. Consider sponsorship, consider putting together a volunteer group. That's getting your employees, even if you're not back to the office in downtown Portland, that's getting them downtown Portland for a 6-hour shift at a festival to realize it's okay. Consider client hospitality, customer appreciation, buy tickets. It is showing up and leading by example to be there in person.
Jeff?
I've seen some great things already from the business community. Just yesterday, we sponsored a solve cleanup as we get ready for Roast Festival, and businesses are part of that as well. And it's been a series of cleanups, including the Business Alliance, just taking ownership of our city and welcoming these guests. Guests are not just from out of town, guests are from our suburbs, and create this welcoming environment for that will serve and help our events specifically. I think that's really, really important to support events. I also will add that I think ambiance and decor matters a lot, and just dressing up. If you have a downtown business, just putting a little window, putting a little window display on your business, or if we have a lobby, to contact events and say, hey, do you have anything that I want to decorate? It doesn't cost you anything, but it creates the spirit of Portland in a very organic way. And we did that during the pandemic out in the neighborhoods, and very successfully. And so it's an easy way to support the events, and with Rose Festival, Blues Festival, or Pioneer Courthouse Squares. Just support events by showcasing and showing it in your place of business, and certainly get your volunteers out. Volunteers are more precious than ever. I can tell you that from example. Prime example right now, it takes 3,000 volunteers for Rose Festival. And it's really important to get volunteers to engage in the success of our events. So, and support us any way you can. Appreciate the support of all of you.
Now it's time for the lightning rounds. What's your favorite thing about your event? We'll start with Jeff.
The duration, how long it is, 3 weeks, is a good thing for us. We love being in the limelight and also, but from an event standpoint, our parades, definitely.
Christina.
I love that the festival, as it turns 35 this year, is multi-generational. There's folks that are bringing their kids, and there's a real tie to the Portland history, but a really fresh look to the future as well. So it is really generational, and that's a really proud part of it and fun for me.
Jennifer.
diversity and just wide range of events that happen for all ages and all people. There's a lot going on, which is great.
Next question. We'll start with Christina. What's your favorite restaurant downtown?
Besides Patty's, I'm a big fan of Luck Luck. Late night if I need food after work.
I typically just zip down to Whole Bowl on the square and just run it back to my desk. But if it's a work lunch, we're probably at Q. It's always fun.
Jeff?
You stole mine. I got to say the Q as well. I don't know if have you had their burgers? They have the best burgers, especially for lunch. I got to go with the Q. It's by far my favorite restaurant downtown.
Last lightning round question. We'll start with Jennifer. What's your favorite Keep Portland Weird moment?
Mine is going to date me. But in 2009, there was a Dave Chappelle pop-up. That was a series of firsts that will live in my mind forever. That was pretty extraordinary.
Christina?
Not sure it's my favorite, but it definitely keeps me like scratching my head about Portland being weird is the naked bike ride. Every year, usually it happens while Blues Festival is getting set up and you just kind of like wonder and watch it go by.
Jeff?
Yeah, Rose Festival has a lot of great traditions, some of which aren't so weird. Some of them we need to create more weird traditions for sure. And I have to say, I got to give this one was an easy one for me. Is in 2015 when we took a piece of Portland's the PDX's carpet that was being torn out. And remember how big a deal that was. We rolled up a piece of carpet, put some eyes on it, and made it the Grand Marshal of the Starlight Parade, and named it PD. And put it on a car, and it got a national and international attention. I think so appropriate for Portland to name a piece of carpet as Grand Marshal for Starlight Parade.
I love that. Thanks. So before we wrap up, I do want to acknowledge that Jeff has been part of the Rose Festival for 25 years, and he did announce last week that this is his last year. And so I'd like to thank you publicly, for your dedication and leadership. And yeah. And also invite you to share, this is a pivotal moment for you and pivotal year. So share any thoughts or feelings on what's next.
Well, it's been way more than a job to me. I've said to my board and friends, I feel like I had the best job in Portland because I get to lead a team that creates this magical festival that over 1 million people per year engage in, and that's something that is just a special thing for me. And to lead it for 18 years and 25 total, and with that team, it feels great to lead it through its challenges, but right now I think it's rise. And I won't say that because I think the opportunities as we get through this year for the organization, this is a special festival. So I feel like it's really appropriate for me to lead us through this final year. And I'll be through October. So it's not like I'm going away, and I will reemerge for sure. I love this city too much, and a new challenge that comes my way.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today. I'd like to welcome back to the stage Andrew Hone to moderate the audience questions.
Sure. Thank you, Katie. And we're just so appreciative that you shared your thoughts with us. So let's give it up one more time for the leader of the Rose Festival. It's that opportunity. We have a few minutes left to take questions from the audience for our panelists who are just absolutely incredible, and our moderator too, who has a distinguished career in public service here in our city. We thank you for working at City Hall. We appreciate it. So questions from the audience or online. If you are chatting online, you may submit your questions. Sydney Mead. You don't even need a microphone, Sydney.
Great question. Fleet Week is back. Rose Festival's back. And one of the things we made a decision on is to do everything we could to get the festival back in its true form, which all of our events returning, not a partial festival. And Fleet Week is such a big part of that. So good news is, yeah, we will have ships from the United States Navy, the Canadian Maritime Forces, the Coast Guard, Army Corps of Engineers, 7 to 8 vessels making its way up river and docking for Rose Festival Fleet Week. So really an achievement in all, and as it relates to making that happen and the plan that goes into that, but it's going to happen. So look forward to that. June 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th coming up soon.
Thank you, Sydney. Other questions?
In terms of how we're planning, we're hoping for full crowds. There aren't any specific capacity measurements in place. The proof will be in the pudding. About half of our ticket sales every year in the last 10 days leading up to the festival, which makes anybody sweat, including myself. But at this point, ticket sales are on par with 2019, which is super encouraging. We're about 10% off of what that was. And frankly, that's wonderful news. In terms of what the festival will feel like, we hope it feels full and cozy, to tell you the truth. Yeah.
That does make me nervous. I'm nervous for you. I'm sorry. Other questions? Going once, twice. So let's give this incredible panel a huge round of applause. To our moderator, thank you. And I would be derelict in my duty if I did not plug for the greatest event of all time, the Portland Business Alliance annual meeting, which is June 30th in Providence Park. And we are just so thrilled, grateful for US Bank for their support. And we are going to absolutely have a great annual meeting. So we hope you'll join us there to celebrate where we've come from and where we're going. And with that, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you once again to our panelists. Thank you to our moderator. Thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to all of you. Now you get to hang out and do what I've always dreamed of, which is to drink after a forum event. So with that, have a great day, everybody. And to my team, thank you so much. Bravo.